thousands of Chevy owners across America are furious, and now they're taking GM to court. This isn't just another recall story. This is a full-blown legal war that's exploding nationwide. From California to Texas and Michigan, thousands of frustrated Chevrolet owners are joining class action lawsuits against General Motors, claiming the company knowingly sold vehicles with defective engines. Engines that fail, seize, and even break down completely long before their time. The scale of this scandal is staggering, and it's growing by the day. At the heart of this storm lies one simple truth. GM's engines are failing, and owners say it's no accident. The complaints are eerily similar: excessive oil consumption, stalling, rough idling, and catastrophic engine failures that happen without warning. We're talking about engines that die at 40,000, 60,000, sometimes even under 30,000 miles. Owners are pointing fingers at notorious engine families like the 2.4-liter Ecotec, the 5.3-liter V8, and the 3.6-liter V6, engines found in some of Chevy's most popular vehicles. What's worse, these problems aren't limited to old, high-mileage cars. Many reports describe brand new vehicles showing symptoms within their first year of ownership. Imagine spending $50,000 on a new Silverado only to be stranded 6 months later with a blown engine, and GM saying, "That's your fault." And speaking of Silverados, these lawsuits hit GM where it hurts most: their best-selling models. The list of affected vehicles reads like a who's who of the Chevy lineup: the Chevy Silverado, the Tahoe, the Equinox, the Traverse, the Malibu. These aren't rare or niche cars. These are the vehicles that built Chevy's reputation. The trucks, SUVs, and sedans that families and workers across America depend on every single day. Now, thousands of those same people are realizing their trusted rides might be ticking time bombs. If you dive into owner forums, Reddit threads, or the official lawsuit documents, the outrage is real and raw. One Silverado owner wrote, "My engine seized at 60,000 miles. GM told me it was poor maintenance, even though I have every service record." Another Equinox driver said, "I had to add oil every week. The dealer said that's normal. Then the engine blew." These aren't isolated complaints. They're part of a massive pattern of failures that have left drivers feeling cheated and betrayed. Many paid tens of thousands for a brand built on promises of durability and American reliability. Now they're paying again for new engines, towing fees, and endless repairs that shouldn't exist on modern vehicles. The lawsuits being filed across multiple states allege that GM knew about these engine defects for years, but chose to ignore them. The claims include defective engine design, concealment of known problems, and even refusal to honor warranty repairs. In other words, these owners say GM sold them broken cars and then walked away when things went wrong. They're not just asking for repairs, they want full refunds, replacement vehicles, and compensation for the thousands of dollars lost in maintenance and diminished value. And here's where it gets ugly. The evidence piling up suggests GM may have issued quiet technical service bulletins to dealers, internal memos acknowledging the very problems they denied to customers. So what has GM said so far? Practically nothing. Aside from vague statements about monitoring customer feedback, the automaker has been largely silent. There's been no broad recall, no official apology, and certainly no public acknowledgement of responsibility. GM's silence is deafening, especially for a company that prides itself on quality and trust. Their ads show hardworking Americans behind the wheel of dependable trucks, but the reality is now filled with frustrated owners stranded on the side of the road. The contradiction couldn't be sharper. GM once bragged that the Silverado was built to last. Now thousands of owners are saying it barely lasts long enough to pay off the first loan, and the fallout could be catastrophic. These lawsuits threaten more than just GM's finances. They're destroying consumer confidence. For years, GM has fought to rebuild its image after disasters like the ignition switch scandal, which killed at least 124 people and cost the company billions in fines and settlements. Now, this new engine crisis risks dragging those dark memories back into the spotlight. If courts side with the plaintiffs, GM could be on the hook for massive payouts. But even if they settle quietly, the damage to Chevy's reputation could linger for years. Investors are watching closely too. Negative headlines, consumer anger, and the shadow of recalls can shake a stock faster than any market downturn, and GM knows it. Behind the headlines, mechanics and engineers are weighing in, and their verdict is brutal. Many point to GM's cost-cutting and design shortcuts as the root cause. One recurring culprit, AFM, or active fuel management, a system meant to improve fuel efficiency by shutting off half the cylinders in certain engines. Sounds good on paper, but in reality, it's been linked to oil pressure loss, lifter failure, and long-term engine damage. Others blame thin piston rings, poor oil control designs, and cheap materials chosen to save a few dollars per unit. As one auto technician put it bluntly, these engines weren't designed to last. They were designed to pass warranty, but this isn't happening in a vacuum. GM is already under massive pressure. Sales are slipping, dealers are overloaded with unsold inventory, EV production delays are piling up, and now just as GM tries to position itself as a future-focused electric giant, it's being dragged backward by internal combustion engines that won't stop breaking. The irony is painful. While GM pushes Ultium batteries and electric Silverados, its gas engines are turning into legal landmines. The question everyone's asking now, can GM survive another wave of scandal without losing America's trust entirely? And that's the real issue here. This isn't just about engines, it's about accountability. When a company the size of General Motors allows defects like this to spiral out of control, it calls into question everything they stand for, from their so-called built for America pride to their claims of world-class engineering. Because if thousands of loyal Chevy owners are left fighting in court just to get what they already paid for, then what does that say about GM's commitment to its customers? The message being sent is loud and clear: profits first, people last. And that's why this scandal has struck such a nerve across the country. Chevy isn't just a brand, it's a part of American identity. Generations have grown up with the Silverado in their driveway or the Malibu as their first family car. So when those same vehicles start blowing engines, when the company that built them shrugs its shoulders, it feels personal. These lawsuits aren't just legal battles, they're a symbol of betrayal. Drivers who once proudly said "Buy American" are now warning others to stay away. Meanwhile, GM is scrambling behind closed doors. Insiders say dealerships have been quietly instructed to handle complaints carefully, offering partial goodwill repairs or small discounts to calm angry customers, but without ever admitting fault. It's a strategy GM has used before: control the narrative, avoid headlines, and hope the public forgets. But this time, social media isn't letting them off the hook. TikTok videos, Reddit threads, and YouTube breakdowns are going viral, with owners showing their engines tearing apart, their oil disappearing, and their repair bills skyrocketing past $10,000. And it's not just customers. Mechanics across the country are calling it one of the worst patterns of engine failure they've ever seen. Independent shops report waiting lists for GM engine replacements that stretch for months. Some dealers have run out of replacement parts entirely. It's a supply chain nightmare that's compounding GM's existing struggles with EV component shortages and factory slowdowns. Let's put this in perspective. GM has already spent billions on recalls, warranty claims, and lawsuits over the past decade. From faulty transmissions to electrical fires and airbag defects, the company has been on defense again and again. But this time, the problem strikes at the core of what GM is supposed to do best: build reliable engines. If consumers lose faith in that, GM's entire foundation crumbles. And here's where things could get even worse. Legal experts are warning that if these class action lawsuits uncover internal memos or engineering reports showing GM knew about these defects and continued selling the vehicles anyway, the company could face punitive damages that go far beyond simple reimbursements. That means billions in potential liability, plus government investigations and possible recalls down the line. We've seen this movie before, and it doesn't end well. At the same time, Wall Street is getting nervous. Analysts are already pointing to declining consumer confidence and mounting legal exposure as red flags for GM's financial health. Some are even suggesting that GM's current push into EVs could stall if the company has to divert funds to settle massive lawsuits. Investors want innovation, but right now, GM is drowning in controversy. And as the pressure builds, competitors are circling. Ford, Toyota, and even newcomers like Hyundai and Rivian are ready to capitalize on GM's bad press, offering deals, warranties, and marketing campaigns that emphasize reliability and trust. The timing couldn't be worse for GM, especially as the company tries to convince Americans to buy into its electric future. How can customers trust GM's next generation of vehicles if they can't even trust the engines sitting in their driveways right now? The ripple effect is already visible. Used Chevy prices are dropping, especially for affected models like the Equinox and Silverado. Dealerships are having a harder time moving new inventory as word of the lawsuit spreads. It's a slow-motion PR disaster, and GM's silence is only fueling the fire. Every day without a real response adds more fuel to the outrage. Industry insiders are now calling this the biggest consumer backlash GM has faced since the ignition switch crisis. That scandal took years to resolve and cost the company billions, but it also left a scar on its reputation that still hasn't healed. Now, with these new engine lawsuits gaining traction, it feels like deja vu. The same story, the same denials, and the same angry customers fighting to be heard. And here's the chilling part, the lawsuits are still growing. More law firms are joining in, more states are adding cases, and more owners are stepping forward every single week. What began as a few scattered complaints has now become a nationwide movement for accountability. Some are even calling for congressional oversight, demanding GM be held to the same scrutiny as past corporate offenders. If that happens, this could explode into one of the biggest automotive legal battles in recent history. But while the courtroom drama unfolds, the question for millions of Americans remains, can GM be trusted again? Or is this the final breaking point for a brand that's already tested consumers' patience for far too long? Because make no mistake, this isn't just about a few bad engines. This is about a company's legacy hanging by a thread, as the people who once made GM great are now the ones leading the fight against it, and that fight is growing louder by the day. Social media feeds are filled with hashtags like hashtag Chevy engine scandal and hashtag FixItGM, while videos of failed engines are racking up millions of views. Former Chevy loyalists, people who bought GM vehicles for decades, are now swearing off the brand entirely. It's no longer a quiet grumble in a dealership waiting room. It's a nationwide reckoning. Owners are realizing they're not alone, and that collective outrage is turning into real power. Auto forums and Facebook groups are overflowing with frustrated drivers comparing notes, sharing attorney contacts, and organizing petitions. Some groups have tens of thousands of members, all documenting the same issues: oil vanishing mysteriously, ticking lifters, knocking sounds, engines shutting off mid-drive. Many of them say GM refused to help until their warranty expired, and that's when the nightmare truly began. Repair quotes of $8,000 to $12,000 for a new engine are common, and GM's goodwill offers often cover a fraction of the cost. For a company that pulled in nearly $170 billion in revenue last year, that's an insult that stings deeply. But what's truly shocking is how long this problem has been brewing. Engineers who worked with GM have quietly hinted that the oil consumption and AFM design issues date back more than a decade. These weren't freak accidents. They were design flaws that slipped through, ignored in the name of efficiency and profit. GM's obsession with squeezing every drop of fuel economy and cutting costs seems to have come at a devastating price: the reliability of its most iconic engines. It's the kind of short-sighted decision that's now unraveling in public view. And it's not just about angry customers. This could soon become a nightmare for GM's dealers too. Across the country, service departments are overwhelmed with complaints they can't fix, while new car sales are starting to slow as customers lose confidence. Some dealers are quietly admitting they're tired of apologizing for GM's mistakes. A few have even told reporters they're switching focus to use non-GM inventory just to stay profitable. That's how deep this scandal is cutting. It's tearing into the backbone of GM's own dealer network. Behind the scenes, there's talk that GM executives are holding emergency meetings trying to contain the fallout. PR teams are reportedly drafting responses. Legal advisors are monitoring court filings, and engineers are racing to find a long-term fix. But here's the problem: the damage is already done. The public doesn't want another carefully worded statement or a limited service campaign. They want accountability. They want GM to admit what went wrong and take responsibility for it. And that's where things could take a dark turn. If this escalates further, GM might face not only civil lawsuits but potential federal scrutiny, especially if regulators believe the company withheld safety information. Remember, the ignition switch crisis started small too, and it spiraled into congressional hearings and criminal investigations. If history repeats itself, GM could once again find itself in front of lawmakers trying to explain how one of America's biggest automakers allowed thousands of defective vehicles to roll off its assembly lines. Meanwhile, the competition is watching and smiling. Ford and Ram are already using subtle marketing lines about trust and proven durability. Toyota and Honda are highlighting their dependability ratings. Even EV makers like Tesla and Rivian are quietly taking advantage of the moment, painting themselves as the future while GM looks stuck in the past. Every negative headline about GM becomes free advertising for everyone else. But the real heartbreak in this story isn't about stock prices or brand wars. It's about everyday people. Teachers, construction workers, parents, who saved for years to buy what they thought was a dependable Chevy. Now they're left stranded, fighting corporations and credit card debt just to stay mobile. For them, this isn't a scandal, it's personal, it's financial pain, it's lost time, lost trust, and shattered loyalty. And while GM continues to stay silent, those voices are only getting louder. Independent journalists are digging deeper, consumer advocacy groups are demanding recalls, attorneys are filing more suits by the week. Every passing day adds another layer of pressure, and every failed engine adds another name to the list of Americans who feel betrayed by one of the country's oldest automakers. The question now isn't whether GM will respond, it's how much longer they can afford not to, because every moment of silence, every denial, every ignored complaint is another blow to a brand already fighting for relevance in a changing industry. GM can keep chasing electric dreams all it wants, but until it faces the truth about its broken engines, that future is built on a foundation that's already cracking. And that brings us to the bigger reality. This scandal isn't happening in isolation. It's part of a growing pattern, a deeper rot inside the American auto industry. The same companies that built their legacy on craftsmanship and reliability are now cutting corners, outsourcing quality, and hiding behind PR statements. GM's engine scandal is just the latest chapter in a much bigger story about corporate greed, eroding trust, and the collapse of accountability in modern car making. Because when a company as old and proud as GM starts losing the faith of its own customers, when even die-hard Chevy fans are walking away in disgust, that's not just a scandal. That's a warning sign. A sign that the American auto industry, as we once knew it, might be heading towards something much worse. A complete collapse of public trust. For decades, GM represented the heart of American manufacturing. Factories buzzing with workers, trucks built like tanks, cars that defined generations. But now, that legacy is being dismantled one lawsuit, one broken engine, and one betrayed customer at a time. The image of Chevy tough doesn't hold the same power when thousands of owners can't even trust their vehicle to start in the morning. And the timing couldn't be worse. GM is in the middle of a massive transformation. Billions invested into electric vehicles, new plants, and battery technology. Yet while the company tries to reinvent itself for the future, its past mistakes are catching up fast. The same customers GM is hoping will buy its new EVs are the ones now suing it over engines that failed in less than 60,000 miles. It's like building a skyscraper on sinking sand. You can't sell the world on a reliable future when your present is falling apart. What makes this even more alarming is the ripple effect spreading through GM's entire brand family. Buick, GMC, and Cadillac, all divisions that use variations of these same engines, could soon face similar complaints. Some owners of the GMC Sierra and Cadillac XT5 are already reporting the same oil loss and lifter issues. If those turn into lawsuits, GM won't be facing a few angry Chevy owners. It'll be facing an entire empire of customers demanding justice. And justice, in this case, might be expensive. Legal experts estimate that if these class action suits succeed, GM could be forced to pay hundreds of millions or even billions in compensation, buybacks, and fines. That kind of hit could cripple parts of its production, delay new launches, and force massive cost-cutting measures across the board. It's not just a legal issue, it's a financial time bomb ticking inside one of America's biggest corporations. But here's what's truly shocking. This could have been prevented. Mechanics and engineers have been warning GM for years about these design flaws. Technical service bulletins as far back as 2013 mentioned oil consumption and lifter issues. Some even suggested temporary fixes, like reprogramming the engine's control modules or replacing small components instead of addressing the real defect.